Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this. I have a strong suspicion that you'll be happier in an hour, regardless, either because you've enjoyed the webinar or because it's over. But we are really happy to have you. And this is a topic near and dear to our hearts. Okay. Hi, Mary Lou. She can't hear me yet. All right. Welcome. I am Karen Matzo. I'm not sure whether we put a little did we put a little slide in here?
We did.
We did. Okay, so I'm gonna go back for a second. This is our agenda for the next hour. Okay, so we're going to talk about objectives, and we're going to talk about defining social emotional competence for educators, a culture of self-care, labeling and recognizing emotions and your body's response, and then some strategies, right, to manage stressful situations. So that's our agenda, and again, we are really happy to have you with us because this is a topic that's near and dear to our hearts, and both professionally and I think personally for Lauren and I. So thank you. And you will get a follow-up email from Beth with the link to the slides and a certificate of completion and handouts, and also a recording of today. Definitely participate. We will be very happy if you do. Utilize the chats for your questions, and also Lauren's going to ask you for some prompts and responses. At the end of the survey, we will have I will put in the chat a link to a feedback survey, which I hope that you will just take 1 minute to fill out. Lauren, did we put the link? We did. Okay, and you might need a piece of paper and something to write with.
That would be good.
Okay. All right, here is the lovely Lauren Mercier. And she has been an educator for many years. She used to teach Spanish at the high school, and then she became a school counselor and an administrator in Chester. She's really well-rounded, K through 12, which is amazing. And she has a lot of interest in social emotional learning and development and multi-tier systems of support. I'm Karen Matzo. I am the PD director here at DS, and I've been in education for about 30 years and done a lot of different stuff. Okay, so welcome to both of you. I mean, welcome to both of us. Lauren, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. Yes, welcome. I'm so happy to see everybody this afternoon, and I'm sure everybody had a long day, and so hopefully you will enjoy this next hour, and we will work our way into some nice strategies that can reduce our stress. So that might be timely for today, but this is actually, we designed this back in the summer, that's okay, to be a 4-part series, 1 part for leaders and then 3-part for educators. So actually back in August, Karen and I had a webinar similar to this for school leaders. I know, Catherine, I saw you pop up on here. Welcome back. Catherine was here. I'm not sure if anybody was here. But essentially we talked to school leaders about the importance of social and emotional competence for their staff. And we talked about some strategies to put in place to take care of educators. And so what we've done here is we're continuing the series. It's really 3 for educators. Today's the first of 3. And so we're going to talk about just these different topics. So today we're going to dive into self-awareness and self-management. Next month, we'll talk about social awareness and relationship skills. And then in November, we're going to talk about responsible decision-making, and we're going to tackle the cost of caring and really talk about setting boundaries and, the cost that caring for others can take on us, and how important it is to really understand that even prior to COVID, right? So, it'll be a nice progression, I think, as we move through the series. One note though, and we will remind you, but we are going to move the series to 3:15 start, starting in October, but we will send some emails to you to remind you of that. But we're just moving all of our start times to 3:15. So that's a little housekeeping for you, but you can go ahead, Karen. Great. And so you are probably receiving this invitation to this workshop series because you are working in a CSI, ATS, or TSI school. And so these are some workshops that we're offering this fall, including this series and others for those schools who we work with. And then we also have several offerings on the next slide, Karen, for workshops that are available to all educators throughout the state. So are you, yeah, there you go. Great, excellent. So some MTSS and PLC practices coming up in October. Actually, we have 3 different workshops coming up regarding MTSS and PLC. So, and you can see the progression there. If you have any questions, feel free to either email us or stay on the call after, and we can answer those questions about those upcoming workshops. You can go forward. Karen's driving, so I get to boss Karen around. So no, I won't be too bossy. All right, actually, I'm going to kick this back to Karen right here. She'll tell you about, because these are her courses.
So I want to share this with you. In November, oh, wait a second. This doesn't say, there we go. In November, we are going to start a course through SNHU. It's a 3-credit course. And the title is Best Practices in Developing a Data Culture. There'll be 3 modules, but for some reason I feel like there's 4 modules and that maybe this is not the most updated. But the point is that I think there's 4 modules, and I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you the updated information instead of what's on this slide. But the bottom line is it's free. It's through SNHU. If you want credit, it's $120 per credit. So for 3 credits, it would cost you $360. Certainly, if you receive CSI funding or title funding, you can pay as an administrator, you can pay your teams to attend, right? And if anybody here is not an administrator and you feel like it would be a great thing for your team, your leadership team, a grade level team to do, go back and talk to your administrator and see if they have funding to pay for you and a team to attend this course. We are asking that you attend with at least a couple of other people because, again, PLC practices and data culture is teamwork. So it's going to be 8 meetings. I think that we will have somewhere between 2 and 4 in-person meetings, and then somewhere between 4 and 6 virtual meetings. I think it's set up right now for not 3, but 4 modules, and there's an in-person meeting per module and a virtual meeting per module, okay? And it starts November 1st, and it will go till right before vacation in February. Okay, so that's there for you for the taking. And I actually sent out a MailChimp, and if you guys want to receive that MailChimp with more details, say after or write into the chat your email and your name, and I'll make sure that I get you more detailed information. I can send you the syllabus. This is a second course that's due to start in February, right before vacation. And this is all about building an inclusive and equitable climate and culture for students and staff. And this one really is 3 modules, and there's going to be 8 sessions, but I'm not sure about the virtual versus the in-person. So anything in person will probably happen in Concord. Again, it's through SNHU. It's free unless you decide to pursue credit. And meetings will be about 2.5 hours.
Would those be during the school day or after, do you know?
They're going to be after school. So
Okay.
it would be, so my thought originally, I think I had said in the MailChimp that sessions would be from 6 to 8:30 at night. But if we're in person in Concord, I'm going to push it back an hour to 5 to 7:30 so that, you know, because we all go to bed at 8:45. So it's going to be a really great class. I'm very excited about both of these courses, and I'll be teaching some of it, but we're also going to bring in some folks from our team and then some special guests, other colleagues that are just super smart and fun. It's just more fun if you mix it up. They'll be delivered through Canvas. Great readings. I mean, for this one in particular, honestly, this is my thing. It's going to be super fun. So that's that. And again, just write into the chat if you want more information. We also sent out MailChimps. All right.
All right. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay.
Objectives.
Perfect. So here are some objectives for this afternoon. We will discuss the importance of social emotional competence for you as educators. We're going to provide some opportunities for you to reflect on your personal values, strengths, and your professional purpose. And we will discuss how to label emotions and recognize a physical response that emotions may create in the body. And we will explore some ways to manage stressful responses in the body. So we're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness and gratitude. We'll focus there. So put you all in the hot seat for a second. I do have some prompts in here for sharing. So I'm hoping that folks are comfortable with that, and you can feel free to share in the chat too, if you don't want to speak. But I'd like to kick off and just have you reflect on a time in your professional career when you might not have exhibited a high level of social emotional competence, and a time when you did indeed exhibit a high level of social emotional competence. And think about, in each of those scenarios, how did you feel? How did others feel? And then what happened, right? So positive, negative impact on you personally, a relationship, dynamic with students. So just curious and wondering who might be brave enough to share first.
Lauren, can we choose between the two and just share one of them?
Oh, sure. Of course. You can choose one. Oh, yes. You don't have to share both, but either one.
I'm going to share first.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to share with you the peak of incompetence. No, this was not my peak. I'm actually, yeah. Okay. When I was in Teach for America, this was my height of social emotional incompetence. I designed and threw a piñata party for my students in Los Angeles. And I put a lot of work into it, and they were very poorly behaved and wild. And I became so frustrated that I intentionally overfed them ice cream, and a third of the class threw up. That's my story. I felt horrible. In the moment, I felt great because I was really mad. They didn't feel good. And I clearly have remembered it since it was a lot of years ago. Not impressed with myself. Okay, I'm modeling bravery.
That was a nice job. Thank you for modeling that. Would anybody like to share?
I'll go for it. One year I was at a different school, and I had a student who was very emotionally and behaviorally challenged. He was a runaway. He would climb up on the roof, those kind of behaviors. And one day they left me with him when he was in an escalated mood. He was throwing everything around. I was sitting calmly. And then when he picked up something that was very precious to me and was about to break it, I totally lost it. And I tried to grab it from him, a very, very wrong move on my part, because that just escalated him more and he got more physical. So I was really, really felt bad that I set him off even more when he was not in a good place.
Yeah.
How was your relationship with him after that? I'm sorry.
After that, I called for help. They took him away. And then the next morning, obviously, upon reflection that night, I had a chat with him. He was in a better place. I was in a better place. I apologized to him and I explained to him why I got really mad, because that object meant a lot to me. And it had very close personal attachment to it. And when he picked it up, I lost control. I said I got really mad. And at that point, I said I should have removed myself from the situation, but I reacted. And so after that, we just, because I believe, and I told him every day is a new start. Let's start all over again. I apologize for what I did. What would you like to do? Because you really hurt my feelings. And so it became a teachable moment. After that, I took it as a teachable moment for him and a teachable moment for me.
It's beautiful, Tara. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Catherine?
Hi, I feel like this is group therapy right now. Something a little different is when I first became a principal, it was really emotionally challenging for me to sit with the uncomfortable fact that there were parents that were upset with me. That out of all my parents that I have, I wanted them all to be happy all the time. And ultimately, just like in our world right now, there's a division of how people feel about certain things. And it's become really clear that there's always going to be people who don't appreciate me. And so, although, I'm always open to hear them and listen, but there's some things that like take, for example, wearing a face covering. There are some people that truly don't believe in it and they're mad at me personally because that has to happen right now inside the building. And so I've come a long way. I'm not quite there. And nor should I think I should ever be there. Like, you always want to hear people when they're unhappy, but that was really stressful and emotionally it was not healthy how stressful I was letting it impact my sense of being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. It is hard. It's a hard position to be in, for sure. Is anybody else? We can keep on keeping on. Thank you. I know you're all thinking of different examples. Karen, you can move on ahead. Great. So Educator SEL is really competencies that adults need in order to manage stress and create safe and supportive classroom environments. We have really been talking a lot in the last couple of years, even prior to COVID, about student SEL, right? Social emotional learning for students. And that is hugely important. And we love our students, and that's why we're in this business. But what wasn't really part of the initial conversation is how do staff take care of themselves to best support students? And so, that is really what we're talking about here. And so we're talking about, certain skills and mindsets that educators need to effectively teach SEL, right? So we're asking you folks to teach this to students. And we should feel like, as educators, we want to feel like, yes, I do have these skills. I feel good about these skills. Still developing, right, Catherine? I mean, we don't have all of these skills all of the time, but just being aware. And I think awareness is a big piece of it. And just really the overall well-being and emotional state of adults in school buildings. We know you have stressful jobs. Schools are stressful places to be. And so talking about taking care of ourselves in that respect. And so, why is it important? Again, we want to build these skills so that we can have healthy relationships. We want to model relationships for students with other adults in the building. We want to model teacher and student relationships and student relationships. And we want to, another piece of this, and this, and this is in every classroom every day, right? Strengthening our own skills will really help us manage and respond to student behaviors more effectively. So if we can, learn to view behavior as communication, we'll feel more successful in managing some of the behaviors that we see on a day-to-day basis. And the last thing, which I think is really important, and we will circle back to this a bit in our third session, but when we have stronger social emotional competence and have developed our skills, we are going to exhibit a higher level of job satisfaction, reduce our sense of overwhelm and burnout. And that actually comes back into that cost of caring. So we'll come back to that, but it's very important that we're aware of that. And so go ahead, Karen. I think this next slide you're going to be familiar with, right? So just kind of give me a nod here if you're familiar with this. This is from the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. So these are the 5 indicators, the 5 spokes in the wheel of social emotional learning that CASEL has deemed important, and that all students need to have these skills within these specific areas. And so we're using this. I think that this is well known, and CASEL is a source of high quality research for SEL. So when I was thinking about developing the series, and I was thinking about, well, what do we want, what skills do we want teachers to have? It seemed like the obvious thing to come back to this same wheel that we're asking of students and use it for staff as well. So today we're going to focus in the orange area. In each of our series here, as we continue, next session we'll focus in the green for social awareness and relationships, and then the final one is in that yellow. So we'll tackle the whole wheel, and we want to make sure that you're feeling good about the indicators in each of these areas. So I'm just going to let you read for a second. This next slide is really the definition from CASEL, and you will note that it does include young people and adults. So I'll give you a second to read that. Perfect. So we are going to work on our skill building here, and we'll move forward, and we'll start with, come back. I'll bring you back to the objective slide just so that you can see, actually the agenda slide. Sorry, Karen. Are you there? I can't see you, Karen. There she is.
Want this?
Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. That's right before it. Yeah. Okay, so here you go. So here's our orange area. So these are some of the indicators that we're going to be talking about today. The bold are specific to what we'll discuss. And then a couple of the indicators that are not bolded, the personal and personal bias and privilege. We actually will tackle this in the next section, the next series next month. And we're going to put that under actually some social awareness and relationship skills as well. But today we're going to talk about your personal strengths and professional values. We're going to talk a little bit about purpose, recognizing and labeling emotions, which is really important, and regulating during those stressful situations. Other components of this would be goal setting and orienting toward optimism. So sometimes, I know personally, sometimes I have lost track of this one. And especially like coming back to school this year, we heard a lot of like, learning loss and talking about deficits, right? And so orienting toward optimism is saying, well, we know students actually did learn last year, so we have to figure out what they did learn, and we have to build on that. And so that's just an example, but finding the positive and not getting caught up in negative, which all people tend to do sometimes, right? So it's just keeping this in our mindset, feeling in control, right? And exhibiting confidence in your role as an educator, practicing gratitude, super duper important. And I don't know how you all do with this one. I'm getting better at this, but asking for help when you need it. So has not always been my strong suit, but I am learning that. I'm still practicing that skill. So that is all part of that self-awareness and management component. So we'll move forward, and here we are. So we'll see this agenda pop up as we move through our time together. We'll talk a little bit right now about a culture of self-care. So this is a nice image. I saw this and I thought this might be perfect for this type of workshop. So you can't pour from an empty cup. So when our cups are empty, right, we feel tired. We may feel a higher level of stress. We may load up on caffeine and coffee, right, during the day. We also might be short-tempered, and short on positive attention that we're able to give others, right? Positive attention, love, and some energy may be hard to come by when you're feeling like your cup is empty. So let's focus on prioritizing and filling your cup. So, and you don't have to respond to this, but this sort of will set us up thinking about what brings you joy emotionally, physically, spiritually, and cognitively. And, creating a culture in our schools, not just what you can do at home, that's important too, but also being able to talk about what we can do during our school day to build back up, right? We know that school days are long. We know that they're draining. And so it's okay, Karen. Whoa, there she is. There, we're good. Yeah, we're good. So also, I want you to consider as we move forward, evaluating what is important to you and bringing values that are important and make sure that we're living them in our school day. So the next slide is something that it's just a brief image of things that, go ahead, Karen. Okay. So this to me, when I was thinking about things that fill me up, I was thinking maybe these things might fill others up as well, right? Just you may have several other things you would put on here, but the thought is that.
Can I interrupt you for a second? There's some extraneous noise that keeps happening, and I'm trying to mute everybody, but if you think that it might be you, then okay. Or Lauren, I don't know whether it's turning pages or something, but it's a little problematic. So okay, back in business.
We're back in business. So, these things are important for you to think about what is going to fill you up, that you can do. Some of these things you can employ during your school day. And some of these things, that you will do outside of school, but thinking about trying to incorporate something that will fill you each day. Maybe it's the same, maybe it's different, but thinking about how you can bring that back to your schedule is really important. If you feel like maybe this is something that's missing, I don't have time for blank, right? Thinking about how I can sneak in a 10-minute walk during the school day, right after school. You're here in the afternoon, you're learning. So we know that you prioritize your professional development, and that's hugely important. So this next piece here is a slide about values. And so I'm actually going to ask you to look at the chart here, the two different columns. And I'd like you to, in the chat, type in 3 values that resonate with you. And if there are values here that are not, or that are not here, type those in too, right? You can type in something that I might have missed, but I'd like you to just take a minute and type that in. See kind of what pops up here. Able to see the chat. Where's the chat? There it is. All right.
We just got kindness, honesty, hard work.
Love it.
Kindness, empathy, open-mindedness. Anybody else?
Nice. Yep. Good. Excellent. Yeah, keep them coming. I love that. I'm noticing a lot of folks are putting in kindness, empathy, fun. I love that. Fun, honesty, humor, friendship. Good. Open-mindedness. Excellent. Community. Good. Good. So I'll ask you, as you've thought about that, how in your workday are you executing these values?
Oh, sorry. I'm not doing a very good job navigating. Okay.
There you are. So we know these things are important, friendship and fun. Excellent. And so how are you executing these values during the day? How are you living? Patience, for example, as a value? How are you living your open-mindedness or your value of community during the day? You can share. I'd love to hear, how folks are connecting to that during the day and keeping values front and center. I know you are.
One of the ones that I chose was community. And so part of what, I'm an EL teacher, and so there's 5 of us on our team. So that's one like kind of ingrown way to already have community within our team, but then also just trying to make sure that as teachers we're a community for the students we work with, working with other teachers, but then also making a community where both students and families feel like they are part of it and they are welcome.
Great. Thank you, Kayla.
Probably like in terms of like hardworking, like I don't ask others to do what I'm not willing to do myself. So what I expect my kids to do, I'm going to show them the exact same thing. Same thing with like teams within the building. Like I'm not going to ask them to do more than I expect out of myself. And I want to be part of a team and each have an active part so that we're all a part of the puzzle and we're not all just being the bossy people who want to do everything.
Right. Right. No, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Tara?
Thank you, Renee.
Well, one of the ones that I put was friendship. Friendship means a lot to me. I have no family here in New Hampshire. So the friends are my family. So not only the adults that I work with, I'm extremely friendly with them. I have fun. I dance with them in the middle of the hallway. I will chat, say namaste and those kind of things. And I do the same with my students. Building that friendship with my students is what allows me to earn their respect. And also they give me the respect, I give them the respect, so that develops really well. And then they feel comfortable enough to talk to me when they don't feel, good or something is wrong or they are concerned about something. So friendship, adults as well as children, works very well.
Thank you. That's great. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Mary Lou. I've been using a lot of gratitude in my day-to-day here at school as a para because there's so much negativity around. And it's the way to stay afloat above that negativity and also show the students that, hey, even if it's a tough, challenging assignment, you can rise above it. Just talk yourself into it and be thankful that you've got people around you that will help.
That's great. Yeah. And I think, go ahead, Jennifer. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Everybody seems to know each other. I don't know any of you, but I would say for me, it's building a relationship with the students that I work with, as well as my colleagues, because I feel like I can't really be successful with anyone if I don't have a relationship with them. So even if I always take, I'm a para as well. I always take when my students arrive, I have a handful to just talk to them for 2 to 3 minutes. Hey, what'd you do last night? Oh, did you end up? And I get to know them and their interests. I know if they had a game, the night before. I know if they went to their grandparents' house for dinner. And I find that just talking to them and building that relationship with them and showing an interest in them before I ask them to do things makes asking them to do things way easier, and they are much more responsive if you just take that little bit of time and just talk to them.
Yeah, it is true. A little goes a long way, right? If you, a little bit of work will make great gains, especially if you do it consistently.
We have
Yeah, go ahead.
Laura?
Yeah.
Okay. We do this exercise, and some of you from Ledge may have done it with the Ramapo folks, but it's the piggy bank, the relationship piggy bank, and how you can't expect to, there's an image of a bank and it's a pig, and all that relationship building is putting money in the bank, is putting value in the bank and the bank and the bank, and you can't withdraw from that bank for children or adults, anybody in relationships, unless there's something there to draw on. And so that's that image. But I also just wanted to say about the role of paraprofessional. The role of paraprofessional is such a powerful role for relationship building. And I think sometimes we don't maximize that role and the importance of that task and capacity. So I'm appreciating hearing that from both you, Mary Lou, and Jennifer. Like, it's just important. So thank you.
It is. Yeah, thank you all for sharing. We really appreciate that. It's hard to put yourself out here, but we feel like the experience of the webinar is better and deeper if folks share. And so we really appreciate all of your feedback. Yeah, we're going to go forward. And so we actually have a poll for you. It's a quick poll. There's 6 prompts, and these prompts will bring you back to a couple of minutes ago. We talked about self-awareness and self-management, some of those indicators. And so we're going to just give you a couple minutes to respond, and then we'll kind of talk about what we notice, and then we'll keep moving on. So Karen's going to pop the poll up.
The poll's gone, Lauren.
Are you kidding me? Oh, holy moly.
We have to share with all of you on the call that we've worked on the poll and the technical logistics of the poll for a week because we were having some issues, and now the poll is gone. So
it's okay. I can give a prompt and we'll use the chat. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, so here's the scoop. We're going to get our chat out, and the responses that you want to think about are always, sometimes, and never. Okay, we'll improvise. This is plan B, not a big deal. Okay, so I'm going to read you 6 prompts, and you will just type in one of those 3 words. How does that sound?
That sounds great. And I'm going to get a pen and write down the chat.
Karen will tally them all up. Perfect. So the first prompt is regulate emotions during stressful situations. You're responding always, sometimes, or never. Regulate emotions during stressful situations. Good. All right. The next prompt is respond versus react to behavior, whether it be a behavior of a colleague, a student, or a family, a parent or guardian that you have to work with. Always, sometimes, never.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh, I sure can. Respond versus react to behavior. Good. Feel connected to your purpose as an educator. Here we go. Orient toward optimism and put on your asset-based lens. You're going to look through your asset-based lens. Again, colleagues, students, parents. Perfect. 2 more. Ask for help if you need it. Remember, I told you I'm not so great at that. Good. Some folks are super duper great at it. Okay, good. Excellent. And finally, are you able to identify what is rewarding about your work? Always, sometimes, or never? Good. So I'm going to ask you, I know Karen's tallying, but what are you noticing?
I'm not really tallying.
I know it's hard to keep up, but I've tracked it too. And I'm watching kind of the responses come in, but what are you folks noticing about the responses as they're coming through? What do you notice?
A lot of sometimes and a lot of always is.
There
Always
can be a fine line.
right. Yeah, some of you guys put both, right? Always or sometimes. It's hard to differentiate, right?
I wanted to put usually on a lot of them.
Next time I'll add that one in, Kayla. We'll
I
add
think
that.
it's interesting that there was one never, and the only never came up with asking for help,
Yes.
which I thought was interesting. You know, it's funny because in the school setting, you don't want to ask for help because everybody's so maxed out, right? So everyone's busy trying to spare their colleagues. But don't forget that it makes people feel good also when you ask for help, particularly if you do have a relationship with them.
So
So
what do you think the implications are of these? I'm going to call them results. It's not a result, but this feedback. I mean, what are the implications? How can we use this for practice?
Lauren, what was the first question?
Regulate emotions during stressful situations.
And the second one?
Respond versus react.
I think it's interesting because I mean, not that we always, but we want kids to always do the right thing and react appropriately. But if we as adults can't do it,
Right.
how can we ask the kids to do the same thing? And I know that they're not supposed to, but we all have that hope that
Sure.
they will.
Right. And sometimes we're rewarding them, right, with things for doing that. From those verbal praise, sometimes it's actually a token or some kind of item in a positive, behavior support. So it is interesting. And you're human. And I think part of this for me as we talk about this and we go through these prompts is the piece about just being mindful about where you're at, right? Or where I'm at individually and how we can work on our individual selves to be better as the whole, right? And I think part of it for me is that element of just being aware. And sometimes I have blown through the day, right? Not being aware in school, right? And feeling stressed and feeling upset about perhaps, all that has to be done or a behavior or some run-in I just had, and I think the piece of it is being mindful and being able to respond versus react and being aware of, like we talked about at the beginning, I didn't really handle that well. Next time I can come back at this and I can try this instead, or so we'll talk a little bit in a second. We're going to transition to labeling emotions, which I think is helpful. And so, but for me, a big piece of this is that awareness. Karen, what are your thoughts?
I'm thinking that for me as an educator and an adult, the regulating my own emotions and responding as opposed to reacting is like primary, because I just never want to be the reason that a student spirals or that a student, like, in other words, it's that whole thing of like, as an adult that works in schools, you make a commitment to being the best possible person that you can be every single day as a role model and as a support for what you want to see in them. And when you fail that, it's a terrible feeling. That's basically my takeaway, So.
Well, I appreciate that feedback. I appreciate everybody participating in that. And thanks for being flexible with the responding in the chat. We thought the poll was very awesome, the way we had set it up. But next time we're going to do the poll and it will work. So Karen, let's press on.
Okay.
So this next piece I find fascinating. We're going to discuss labeling emotions and recognizing your body's response here. So yeah, go ahead. There we go. So there is a neurological connection here, which is amazing. So we're going to talk a little bit about increasing our emotional vocabulary to enable ourselves to accurately identify and articulate feelings. So going beyond feeling angry, feeling sad, feeling happy, and digging a little bit deeper with those emotions. Identifying emotions will help us, it will ensure that our emotional responses are productive and intentional, right? So we'll respond versus react when we're able to step back for a minute and actually label how we're feeling. And here's that neurological piece, that stress response to labeling. So our brain's actually going to release those neurotransmitters, which can calm our response. And so that's what makes labeling so very important, and allowing this distance for time and space to consider how best to respond. And I think it was Renee. I know, Renee, you had typed in that you feel like you do well with that, responding versus reacting. I think a few of you did, but I remember Renee is coming up, giving yourself that time to respond. So let's kind of move forward here, and you'll see this next image, which we'll talk about. But emotions, and you know this, emotions trigger, a physical response in the body. So I don't know if you thought too much about it, if anybody's had experiences like cold feet before, or like a gut feeling about something, maybe a shiver down your spine, or like that pit in your stomach, right? And so that's coming from somewhere, right? That's your body's response to how you're feeling, to emotions. And so noticing these physical responses can actually help identify our stressors. And, we're talking about the workplace. Obviously, we can take this home and use this in the home setting too. But understanding the effects of the emotions will help us, again, respond with intention, and thought and care, with our students, with our colleagues, right? Because we know that can be sometimes stressful. So, I'm actually going to have you go back, Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the image at the bottom, with the different emotions that are labeled, there's been several studies that have been done that show that the intensity of emotion is actually directly linked to the intensity of a physical or a mental emotion, in our response in our body. And so these colors in these studies, show that increased responses like love and happiness, they're going to have warmer colors, and you'll see that, like happiness and love, you're going to feel that over throughout your whole body. And then depression, the decreased responses have cooler colors in the body, and you'll see like that type of emotion really is sort of felt throughout the whole body, decreased response everywhere throughout. Contempt, we're going to feel that in the head. Pride, torso, head, and arms, right? The way we're carrying ourselves might be an indicator, if you've had that experience, you're feeling proud. And shame in the torso and head, and you have like a deactivated, if you see that blue, that means that deactivated response in the bottom. So I find this fascinating. I want to learn more about it too. As I was going through this, I was like, this is amazing. And, in my mind, I've always known these are connected, but this is just really, I think it's fascinating. I think it really does have implications for how we get through the school day, right? How we move through the day. So you can go ahead, Karen. I'm going to have folks think about a positive, you can go forward, a positive and a negative experience.
Hold on one sec.
Okay.
A little delay.
There we go. And so this is where, if you have your pencil and a piece of paper, I want you to think about a positive experience that you've had. It can be recent, it could be a long time ago, it doesn't matter. And just jot down the first words that come to mind about how you felt, about this experience. And then the same thing rings true on the flip side. So a negative experience that you've had, and just jot down the first things that come to your mind for each of those. And then we're going to move to a feelings wheel, which will help us kind of go a little bit deeper into the. Yeah, so positive experience and negative, and then any feelings that come to mind about that experience. Another couple seconds. Great. You can keep writing. I'm going to have Karen go to the next slide. You got a quick little preview before, but this slide, again, I find very interesting because it's going to allow you to dig a little bit deeper. So, I want you to think about that positive or negative feeling. And you don't have to do them both. You can just think of one or the other for this. But, if you were angry about something, take a peek at that pink spoke, and can we dig a little deeper? Did you feel irritable? Were you exasperated? Were you feeling hateful, hostile? So thinking about, are there other words that could actually describe how you're feeling a little bit better than I was angry? Thinking about that situation, and just write down a couple if that applies to you. And then, often we don't just feel one thing. So thinking about, are there additional emotions here that you are experiencing simultaneously in your situations? Everyone's looking at the wheel here. It's awfully pretty. It's nice to look at.
I'm also thinking that for kids, if you're going to do this instruction with students, what a wonderful way to do some vocabulary building. It's stuff that's really accessible to them, and you accomplish many goals with many stones with one bird. No, you kill many birds with one stone. That's not good, but do you know what I mean? You can really have some good vocabulary lessons around this that double as your SEL instruction. Jennifer.
Is there a way to make it bigger? It's probably just me with my old eyes, but I'm having a really hard time reading the words in the wheel.
Oh no, how do I make it bigger? Let me see. I don't think I can make it bigger on the slide.
Okay.
Well, you're going to have a copy of this, Jennifer, too, so you can zoom in on your computer. Yeah.
Okay, that'll be perfect. Thanks.
How do you think that labeling emotions, if you had labeled them, could have, impacted your experience a little bit differently? Just wondering, one or two people, I don't know if you have a thought on that.
I had originally put angry on mine, but then looking at the wheel, it was really more like kind of exasperated or frustrated. So I feel like that kind of is a little bit less powerful. So it kind of shows, okay, you're not really angry. Like, it's not that big of a deal. You're just frustrated. It's not like the end of the world. So it kind of helps you put it almost like put my emotions in perspective for that situation.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Tara?
I also had anger, had a recent interaction with my husband. And when I look at that wheel, I was more aggravated with him.
Yeah. Right.
It was not anger, but like it was, are you really not thinking? It's frustrating. It's aggravating me.
Right.
That you don't get it.
Right. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. And so the next piece of it is, you're labeling these emotions, and then we need to be aware of how we're experiencing them in our bodies, right? And so we saw the slide with the figures and the colors. And so we're going to move forward to the next slide, and you can just choose your positive or negative. No.
Happening.
Oh,
Let's try this again.
So I'm going to talk you through it, right? So you can find out, that's okay. Yeah.
We're here.
Your positive or your negative experience, where did you feel that? Can you recall that? Sometimes we feel things very strongly, and other times, honestly, we might feel things so often that we don't even think about it anymore. But if you actually stop and think about it, you can make your little stick figure, or you can just, look at the image and think about it. But and we all, we may have a feeling of anger, but we all may feel it a little bit differently. So I guess, what I want to ask you is thinking about labeling, thinking about identifying your physical response to it. How will you use this to inform your work? I mean, I think that's really important. Is there a change you could make? If anybody has a thought on that.
So are you saying, having learned this about labeling, and then where am I experiencing when I am feeling that emotion? How am I going to transfer it to my students?
Well, and how can it inform your day to day? I mean,
I've started to notice more when I am starting to feel, not as much as when I'm a positive experience, but when I'm negative, I'm starting to kind of focus a lot more on what's happening to me physically. My full body gets hot. My head is like, it's burning. I start to sweat. So it's like my blood pressure is rushing and I am feeling those things. And when I start to feel that way, I kind of say, it's usually my spouse. After 36 years of marriage, I really have to say, you need to give me space. That was not happening before.
Yeah.
But now with all this learning that I'm doing, I'm actually applying it a lot more at home.
Yeah.
And it's like, you need to give me space. I need to calm my body. And he's getting really good at giving me the space rather than coming after me, questioning me in.
Good.
So,
Yeah. I mean,
and with students, I think when I feel something with them, I am starting to express, my body's getting hot. I think I am getting a little bit upset with your behavior right now. I'm going to take some time to calm myself. So that way I am kind of modeling would be a way to say of how to recognize your emotions.
absolutely. Yeah. So we can use these personally, and in school. And, this, we can go to the next slide, Karen. I want to take about 2 or 3 more minutes. I know we're right at the end. Did somebody want to say?
Okay. Mary, did you want to say something?
I just had a little something. Yeah. So I noticed my voice changes a lot. And especially with the angry, I feel like I clench my teeth and that kind of thing. So I will say to my students, do you notice a change in my voice? To make them aware too. And just everyone has these emotions, but sort of let them know that this is a sign when someone's voice changes.
Yeah.
You should maybe notice that and see it. And they say, yes. I notice the difference rather than just outbursting, I've tried to do that.
Yeah.
It's the flip side too. If you're having a negative thought and you're aware, but you don't want to convey to your class, like if you're uncomfortable with something that's happening, but it's actually a perfectly appropriate thing, but it's your own stuff, right? You want to be aware of your physical reaction so that you're not non-verbally conveying a message that you don't want to convey. So it's the same. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that feedback, everybody. That was really good. So I know that we're running right up to the end. And so what we'll do is we'll just go through some of these resources for you. But I chose mindfulness here as the theme for, to use for some of these strategies to help manage stressful situations. And part of that is because of the science behind it. And we'll talk. I have one more slide that I want to work through with you about mindfulness. But, I think that we're doing a lot with students around mindfulness. And I know classrooms that I've been in recently in the last few years have really, we're really increasing what we're teaching students. And so these strategies that we'll talk about today are for your kiddos, but they're also for you as well. And so if you can choose 1 or 2 that you start to do on a more regular basis, I think it naturally will evolve, in your practice as a teacher, as an educator. So I think that, and you'll be able to do it with ease, right? Which is great. And you won't have to think too much about it and share with your students. But this last slide here, and then again, I do promise you we'll wrap up. You can go forward, Karen. Oh my goodness, where's my mindfulness about the developing the brain? So there you go. There it is, the brain. I love the brain. All right, so the amygdala, you see that. So it's labeled. So I did 1, 2, 3 at the top because the image is labeled. But that fight or flight center essentially, right, is activated when detecting or reacting to emotions, especially strong emotions like fear. And so practicing mindfulness is actually going to shrink that matter in your brain, which is very interesting. And so it will shrink that matter, and the hippocampus, which you'll see labeled for number 2, actually is critical for learning and will help regulate that amygdala. And so when practicing mindfulness, the hippocampus, the matter in the hippocampus actually increases and the matter in the amygdala decreases. And so when this is happening, we see that essentially the connection between the amygdala and the rest of the brain is going to get weaker. So what that means is the connection associated with attention and concentration gets stronger in your brain. And so we see that a well-developed brain, we see students and adults, right, that have improved attention, an increase of compassion. Self-compassion is included in here too, right? So not just compassion for others, but compassion for yourself, and a better ability to reduce your own stress and anxiety. Tara, do you have a question?
I just wanted to share what you were saying. That's a lot of our Burke training with Dwayne Baker. It's like you've got to have the students ready to learn, and the ready to learn is kind of, having your brain not hijacked.
Right.
And, because like you said, it's critical for learning. And then they go to the next step, what to learn.
Right.
With the focus and management. So when you were talking about it, it just made a connection. And if that brain is not ready to learn, then there is no point in teaching.
Right. Right. Excellent. Yeah, thank you. And so, and I know I'm moving quickly just because it's at the end, but if we go forward, we're going to link you to some strategies for mindfulness, and, thinking about ways that you can implement something like Tara, you're saying right before, being ready to learn, like what's a daily practice I can implement with my students so that I can actually reap the benefits of it as well. But I know that I can get my students centered. It could be a morning meeting activity. When you're going over that message, you're ready to wrap up morning meeting. You are going to include some type of mindfulness, some ready to learn strategies so that you're grounded and, your kiddos are grounded as well. So this image is actually a link, and I've gone ahead and described some of these different strategies for you. So
now, Lauren?
Sure. I think that's fine.
That didn't work so good. Hold on.
Yeah, right in there is good. Perfect. Yeah, and again, you'll see this, but that breath bubble, you might even have it on your watches if you have a smart watch or an app for it, but you're inhaling and the bubble expands, you're exhaling and the bubble gets smaller. That's something very simple that you could project that bubble up on, your board in your classroom and work through a few minutes of breathing. I used to be annoyed by it on my watch, but now I'm thankful that it's there, right? So I actually take the opportunity a couple of times during the day, usually, to do a little bit of that breathing. This next piece is a couple of setups for you, some statements so that you can practice perspective and compassion. If you're frustrated with somebody or you're upset with a dynamic, it's just some practice on some words to use. So basically you're putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And again, you're making your statements in sync with your breathing. So it's sort of that repetitive type statements that you're making, and you're inhaling, making your statement, exhaling, and go through that a few different times. Go ahead, Karen, you can scroll down.
It's great, Lauren. I really like that one.
Yeah, I think that's important. Journaling, some folks are really, committed to journaling, others not so much. But if you let go of some of the rules around journaling and just say it can be a brain dump, it can be bullets, it can be a couple of words. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be anything with too much structure, but it's just really an opportunity to put everything out there and not keep it here, which tends to be the problem. And it gets in everything else gets, clouded when you have too much in the brain. A body scan. This is actually very relaxing for students.
And for teachers.
And yeah, I mean, so that's my point. If you just do this for you, everyone else reaps the benefits of it too, right? And so this is really being mindful. You can start at the toes and you can work your way up to the head, but just being mindful of, inhaling and how do my toes feel? I might give my toes a squeeze, exhaling, and everything is relaxed and just working yourself right up. And this is something you can do at lunchtime. This is something you can do for literally 1 minute after your kids go to their integrated arts class and you have 1 second to take a breath, right? You can do it in the bathroom. I mean, wherever you find a second, right? You can do some of these things. And then tapping, if I had time, I was going to take you through a round of tapping, but essentially, this is it comes from the emotional freedom technique. It's called tapping, and it's working through different meridian points on the body, and increasing the flow of energy in your body. If your school is using Choose Love for social emotional curriculum, Choose Love actually has incorporated tapping into their curriculum. And I'm happy to chat after if you'd like, but essentially the Tapping Foundation, I linked that website on that worksheet. It's lovely. You can also YouTube videos of different scripts you can do with kids. It's essentially giving a voice to the thoughts in your head as you relax your body. So those are some strategies that you can put in place. And then just finally, compassion and gratitude right here. Again, I will not go through all of those right now. There is a link and you can read that, but I've basically just described some of these for you. Again, you can do these and it doesn't take long. You can do them with the kiddos as well.
I'm just showing you all so that you know that this is all here for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So lovely.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's it. Right? That is
Can I
it.
just say something about the tapping? If you would like for at some future date to have Lauren help you develop that, I did that with her a year ago, and I just loved it. So, and you can do it with your kid, with your students, and she can take you through a script, and she did it. It was really wonderful. So write into the chat if you would like to arrange like 10 minutes to do it with Lauren sometime. Won't you be happy to?
I would love to do it. I would love to do it. I'm happy to tap. So the last piece here is just, we'll pop that survey link in the chat for you. And if you just had a second, you can, and you could take that survey, that would be lovely. Karen, do you want to do that? You want to take?
I do, but I don't know where the survey link is.
It's on the questions. Here it is. So tomorrow you'll get an email with all the resources, this PowerPoint, and then all of the additional resources as well. Does anybody have any questions? No, we've kept
I'm going to
you.
put the survey in the chat. And if you do have time, great. That would be terrific. It'll take 2 seconds. And if not, it's okay. Here it goes. Oops, I think I just sent it just to Kayla by accident. Kayla, I hope you say nice things because you're the only one.
Fill out 12 of them, it's fine.
All right, you guys. So thank you. And so the slides themselves will be sent to you along with a certificate and the handouts, and you'll have access to those 2 Google Docs that Lauren had. For those of you that wrote in about more info for the course, I will follow up with that. If you do want to do the tapping with Lauren, we can have a little 20-minute session. Just let us know. Okay.
But thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
We'll take a couple minutes just in case anybody has questions. Have a good night.
Karen, I have questions.
Great.
So I'm sorry, my brain is in 20 different places right now today. I know you talked about the courses a little bit earlier. So the course is free unless you want credit for it, right? And the data course, is that all online, or did it say that there were 2 in person for Concord?
The data course, I'm aiming for 4 in person and 4 online, but we can talk about that if it's a tremendous deterrent.
Yeah, because in Keene to Concord for an evening trip to Concord and back, that would be challenging to find staff to commit to that.
Okay. Okay. That's good to
Yeah.
know. And I am thinking about that. It's such a crazy trade-off. I don't quite know how to manage it, but we can, do you see your staff being able to come maybe twice? If I did like a 2 and 6 thing, well, there's like a 1 or 2 things that should be done in person. And aside from that, I can try to shift that balance.
So there's 8 sessions.
Yeah.
All right. And so and how many people should I ideally have on a team? Like 5?
As many as you want. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me get some more information. I'll get back to you within the next day or 2 with feedback from staff where they're like, no, that really wouldn't work for me, or yeah, because let me try it, because I do think going in person it's a different feel and commitment. Like there's a different focus when you're in person. So even for me, who I'm not as scattered if I'm in person, I know that from my experience these past couple of years. And so, what's that?
How far is it, Keene to Concord?
No, I live in Milford. How far is Keene?
It's about an hour.
About an hour.
About an hour, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can shift the balance of the in-person and depending on who signs up. And I'm going to think about that because I'm already thinking about it. The other thing though, is that you know, through any additional funding that you have, which I don't think you probably don't have additional funding, but you might consider trying to pay folks to attend.
I don't think I could get that through. Keene's not big on paying additional money because they spend a lot of money on PD during the day. Like Keene really does a nice job. I was in a district previously where they didn't provide PD or hardly any PD. So Keene is really fabulous about that. But their big thing is they don't waste. Well, I don't want to say waste. Like they pay people for summer curriculum work, but they don't spend a lot of money on people like after hours.
Yeah, no, I know that from Eric Press at Franklin.
Yeah, so yeah, I love Mr. Kress. His wife works for me. I love her too. What a great family. So yeah, I really would like to do it, but you know, I think one thing we were talking about, and I was bragging about how I was doing this today because we were talking about how to use our ESSER funds, and we were talking about the importance of our staff, you know, and their social emotional needs as well. And I was like, and one thing that came up is just the idea that people are at their capacity. Like when we talk about interventions and having people stay later and do like after school programming and stuff like that, I think this whole thing with COVID and, you know, people are just emotionally exhausted.
Yeah.
So to ask them to work more hours or longer hours, like we have to be conscientious of that. So honestly, that's what I'm thinking of, is like an hour both ways plus is like 2 hours in person. That's a lot of time in the evening, and then to have school the next day, that's a big ask for staff. But I'm going to do some homework. People really love data, and they love that we're looking at data and that we're being real educators as previous once was, looking at data and planning and not talking so much about COVID, you know what I mean? So let me see what I find. And
would the credits be appealing to anybody on your staff?
I don't think so. you know, if it was, it might be just a couple. I mean, some of them have, right now, like the staff that I have right now, I have a bunch of new people. I love Keene State. They've given me a lot of cute little energetic, happy individuals. But you know, I have a couple people working on like a BCBA or wanting to work on their BCBA, but right now, like I don't have people working toward like their leadership degree or anything, and that's kind of surprising. Usually in a school, especially this size, you'd have like 1 or 2 people working on like some sort of leadership or curriculum masters or something.
Do they have, but most of the people have their master's degrees?
Some do, but
Is there a pay hike if you get it? Like, you know.
I think where my staff is right now is I have a lot of people with elementary age kids. So I have fresh out of college and then parents.
Yeah.
You know, and so I suspect that'll happen in the future. I think it's just the age and family circumstance of staff, but yeah. So anyways, don't count us out though. Let me do some homework, and I really would like to do something like this. I think there's a readiness for it. I just think I want to check on the time commitment for people.
Okay. And again, I'm going to think about the in-person versus distance ratio. We had 3 other responding teams so far, so let me look where they're from, and you know, I was being idealistic.
I know. I wonder. Well, it would be. I have no substitutes. I was thinking if we could do like a 4-hour during the day, like, but that's wishful thinking. That's dreaming.
Have substitutes, yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to substitute. I have one that occasionally comes, you know, and hopefully she keeps coming back after you make the newspaper for your cluster. You know, you're like, I'm not the school getting a substitute this week. But yeah.
Oh.
All right.
I'm glad you were able to attend today, Catherine. Thanks for all your participation. Is it helpful?
Yeah, I think it's a nice. I was a school counselor, so I'm probably more in touch with my feelings than other people, you know. And I think it's a nice reminder of, and it helps frame my thinking of what I need to do with my staff. Like it helps me to remind me of the language to use with my staff. And really interesting. I want to look at that Choose Love curriculum. I've looked at it before, but that tapping thing sounds really interesting. And I know my staff, they're always looking for cool things that they can use and also use with their students.
Yeah.
So we're working on it. We've gotten pretty beat up the start of this year. I changed dismissal, and parents, it's really hard to retrain adults.
Yeah.
So they were a challenging bunch, but we've gotten to a good place now of some level of acceptance. And then, and then we, it's been interesting. It's not an easy time for sure. I think there's a lot of emotions for all the adults in our lives, our parents and our teachers, and
yeah, I think so too. Well, if I can be of any assistance with the tapping, just let us know. And yeah, but definitely do some digging and Choose Love. And they did an overhaul last year of curriculum, like beginning of last school year, and it was in there. So I don't know if they've made any edits for this school year in the curriculum, but I know last year they did. So
all right, I'll check that out. Well, thanks for listening to me. You 2 ladies have things to do. So.
Yeah, that's well, thanks, Catherine. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll come down.
Okay. Bye-bye.